Hey there, it's JohnBerry555, and I'm continuing my retro reviews for Gilligan. Today I'm going to be looking at Season 1, Episode 2, Home Sweet Hut. So this is only the second episode of the season, and the castaways decide they need to have a hut in case of rain. After, they got rained on while Skipper was preparing breakfast. And so they build a hut, but eventually they have arguments and they disassemble the community hut and build other own individual huts, which Gilligan all accidentally destroys. So they have to rebuild the community hut. They survive a storm and somehow it ends up in the middle of the lagoon. How? I don't know. I guess they must have built a floor and they had an anchor in there as well somehow. And it's also made of bamboo, so it's not even from the minnow, so it's not like a momentum or something. So that's kind of funny. I will say this. Eventually, in the first television movie, Rescue from Gilligan's Island, how do they get off the island? In their huts that they turn into a boat. But that doesn't happen in this episode. But it's kind of an interesting connection between the second episode ever and the first television movie. And of course, there's some great gags. Gilligan keeps on giving away the tools that him and the Skipper are using to build their hut. And so they don't have any tools or supplies or anything to build their hut. There's also, just Gilligan bumping into stuff and that kind of normal, slapstick comedy, for like a better term. I briefly pause. I feel like there's still another term to use besides slapstick. Physical comedy, I think. But also, too, there's a scene where the Skipper gives Gilligan a 6-foot beam to plane, and Gilligan uses a machete for that before he gives away the machete to Ginger, and then eventually, apparently, he also gave away the saw to, I believe, the professor at some point, so he has no tools. And he also gives away some rope that he cuts and breaks the board in half, perfectly in half, like it was pre-cut. And then Skipper comes and be like, Gilligan, actually, I made a mistake. I need that 6-foot beam in half. And Gilligan's like, okay, and just pretends like to hit him with his hand to cut it in half and hands it over. But the thing is the board was pre-cut in half. When Skipper brings it in, you can clearly see it's already been cut. So that beam was cut from the get-go. Which is actually kind of surprising because there is at least one cut, a film cut, so they could have easily switched the boards around during that cut. But they didn't. They just decided, let's bring the board in uncut and make sure our characters hold it from the middle so that way it doesn't fall in half. Honestly, it's quite humorous when you catch it. Just the kind of little thing that they've done there. And also, too, the huts everyone else built, they're just simple squares. Way different than the community hut, which is more hexagonal, I would say. And then the huts that we see later on in the show, especially once we get to the color seasons. The color seasons, there's only 2 of them, that's still plural. The huts seem to get more elaborate, for lack of a better term. But it basically seems like the first hut that they build, the community hut, is the one that doesn't become, but does the supply hut. Again, things are weird. I would say later on in season 3, and then, season 1 and definitely season 2 and 3 is when they firmly establish which huts are which and all that. Again, as you're building sets and realize what you need and what you don't need. And then, of course, the episode ends with them building their own individual huts again, which, honestly, it does make sense. The idea to build a community hut first makes sense. Then they can build all their own huts. I'm just saying. Skipper, you should have made that as your argument for why we're building one hut and not multiple. One hut so that we have something, and then we can build additional huts. But no, his argument is like, we shouldn't be here that long. Meanwhile, over the radio in this very episode, the announcer says that the search for them has been called off. Honestly, that is just great. And great in the comedic beat of it, even though it is a couple scenes apart. Also, Mr. Howell does physical labor in this episode. He actually builds his own hut. In previous, there's only one episode before this. In subsequent episodes, every time the Howells need some kind of physical labor done, they try to get Gilligan to do it for them. So it is kind of abnormal in terms of his later characterization. But, the episode wouldn't have worked if Well, actually, it would have been funny to see Gilligan rolling back and forth between two huts building them. Actually, that probably would have been funny. But I think more of it, they hadn't fully developed the characters yet and figure out what each character to be. Because while there's not really any character development on the show, that really doesn't really start occurring into the television movies. You still will develop characters as you figure out what you actually want to do with them and how you want to communicate the character traits and all that. So basically, they're still figuring out the characters, though they do pretty much have all the characters down pat from the get-go. So it's just refinement, not figuring it out at this point. But that's pretty much all I have to say. Like I said earlier, this is a fun episode. It's still early on, of course, but it's got some good gags, some good moments. So you can let me know your thoughts and what's your favorite jokes in the comment section down below. And I'll see you next week for episode 3. Voodoo Something to Me. Thank you for watching my latest retro review. I do hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, please be sure to give this video a like. Also, consider subscribing to my channel if you haven't done so already. And I hope to see you for my very next video.